Users of the internet, what's the weirdest dream you ever had? It started like any other dream, walking into my local library on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. The familiar smell of old books and wooden shelves filled my senses as I made my way past the front desk. Everything seemed normal at first until I noticed something odd about the library's layout. The usual reading area had been replaced by an endless corridor of towering bookshelves that seemed to stretch infinitely upward, disappearing into a misty darkness above. My curiosity got the better of me as I walked down the main aisle, running my fingers along the spines of leather-bound books. The wood floors creaked beneath my feet, each sound echoing longer than it should have in the impossible space. Each book had a date etched in gold on its spine instead of a title, the numbers gleaming under the warm light of antique brass lamps that lined the shelves. I stopped when I spotted one marked with my birthday from 15 years ago. The moment I pulled it from the shelf, the world around me shifted. Suddenly, I was experiencing that day through my own eyes, my 10th birthday party. The memory was vivid, but something was different. I could see details I'd long forgotten, the chocolate frosting smeared on my little sister's dress, the way my mother's hands shook slightly as she lit the candles, and the proud smile on my father's face as he recorded everything on his old camcorder. Even the taste of the vanilla cake felt real. The sunlight streaming through our kitchen window cast the same patterns on the wall that I remembered, but now I noticed how the dust particles danced in the golden beams, each one sparkling like tiny stars. When I closed the book, I was back in the strange library. My heart raced as I realized what I'd stumbled upon. These weren't just books, they were memories. Every single one contained a day from someone's life. The air felt electric with possibility as I began pulling more volumes from the shelves, reliving forgotten moments from my past. Some were mundane, random school days, summer afternoons, quiet evenings at home. Others were significant: my graduation, my first kiss, the day we lost my grandmother. Each memory felt more real than any dream I'd ever had, complete with smells, textures, and emotions I thought I'd forgotten. The deeper I ventured into the library, the stranger things became. The dates on the spine started showing days that hadn't happened yet. The wood of the shelves began to pulse with a faint blue light, and the air grew thicker, almost syrupy. My hands trembled as I reached for a book dated 5 years in the future. A voice in my head warned me not to open it, but I couldn't resist. The leather cover felt warm to the touch, almost alive. The moment I opened the future volume, everything felt wrong. The air became thick and heavy, pressing against my skin like a weighted blanket. The words on the pages seemed to float and rearrange themselves, refusing to stay still under my gaze. I caught glimpses of myself in an unfamiliar apartment, surrounded by moving boxes and furniture I didn't recognize. There was a wedding ring on my finger, but I couldn't see my spouse's face. It was always just out of view or blurred, like a photograph taken with a shaky hand. The windows in this future home looked out on a city I'd never seen, yet somehow knew intimately. As I continued reading, the future memories became increasingly unstable. Pages started bleeding into one another, and sounds began echoing through the library. Phones ringing, children laughing, cars honking, all overlapping in a cacophony of potential futures. The noise grew louder with each page turn, building to an overwhelming crescendo. I tried to close the book, but the pages kept turning themselves, showing me fragments of days yet to come. The images began moving faster, like a film reel spinning out of control. That's when I noticed something truly terrifying. Each time I looked up from the future book, the library had changed. Shelves rearranged themselves like pieces of a giant puzzle, and books disappeared only to reappear in different locations. When I looked back at the volumes containing my past memories, the dates and contents had shifted. It was as if by reading my future, I was actively changing my past. Memories I just revisited were now different. Subtle changes at first, then larger ones. My 10th birthday cake became chocolate instead of vanilla. My grandmother's last day showed her in a different hospital room. My first kiss happened on a beach instead of behind the school. In a panic, I started running through the library, trying to find my way back to the entrance. But the aisles seemed endless, each turn leading to another identical corridor. The sound of shuffling pages filled the air, like thousands of invisible hands flipping through books simultaneously. The dates on the spines began spinning wildly, past, present, and future, all blending together in a golden blur. The floor beneath my feet began to ripple like water, and the brass lamps flickered with increasing urgency. Just when I thought I was trapped forever, I spotted a book that seemed to glow faintly. Its spine showed today's date, the numbers pulsing with a gentle, reassuring light. With no other option, I opened it and was immediately pulled into the present moment. Lying in my bed, heart pounding, sheets soaked with sweat, my alarm clock showing 3:33 a.m. The dream was over, but its effects lingered. For weeks afterward, I experienced déjà vu almost daily. Small moments from my regular life matched fragments I'd seen in those future books. I began noticing details I'd normally overlook: a stranger's laugh, the pattern of raindrops on a window, the way shadows moved across my walls at sunset. Each one felt significant, as if they were pages from those memory books coming to life. The strangest part, every night since then, I've had the same dream. The library is always there, waiting, but it's different each time. Sometimes the shelves are underwater, books floating like aquatic creatures, their pages rippling in invisible currents. Other times they float in space, the books orbiting around me like planets around a sun. The books rearrange themselves, showing me new possibilities, different versions of my past and future. I've learned to be careful about which volumes I open, but I can't stop myself from returning. There's something addictive about having access to every moment of your life, even the ones that haven't happened yet. Part of me hopes I never wake up from tonight's visit to the infinite library. Another part desperately wishes I'd never opened that first book. Because now I know our memories aren't just stories we tell ourselves about the past. They're living things, constantly changing, rewriting themselves. And sometimes, if you find the right book in the right library, they can show you things you were never meant to see. The most terrifying part? I'm starting to notice small changes in my family photos, shifting details in my childhood memories. And sometimes, when I look in the mirror, I catch a glimpse of someone who looks like me but isn't quite right, as if the future I read about is slowly bleeding into my present. Story number 2. I work at a marketing agency where I've been secretly crushing on one of the graphic designers for the past 8 months. Let's just say that walking past his desk every morning has become the highlight of my day. He has this habit of running his fingers through his dark hair when he's focused on his computer screen, and the way his forehead creases slightly when he's deep in thought makes my heart skip a beat every single time. I've never acted on these feelings. Our casual conversations in the break room about his latest projects or my coffee addiction are the closest we've ever gotten to anything personal. But last night, my subconscious decided to take things in an entirely different direction. The dream started in our office, but something was off. The usual fluorescent lights were replaced by this soft golden glow that made everything look like it was being filmed for a movie. The usual background noise of keyboards clicking and phones ringing had transformed into this low, pulsing music that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I was sitting at my desk trying to focus on my work when I felt a presence behind me. He was there, leaning over my shoulder to look at my computer screen, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. The scent of his cologne, something woodsy and subtle that I'd caught glimpses of in the elevator, was now overwhelming my senses. In reality, this would have made me freeze up completely, but Dream Me was surprisingly confident. The office around us began to shift and change. The walls seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting like a living thing. Our co-workers had disappeared and the space morphed into this massive empty gallery. My computer screen started displaying all these incredible abstract designs that moved and swirled like living art. He moved closer, his hand resting on the back of my chair, and began explaining how each design represented different emotions. But instead of hearing his words, I could feel them, each emotion washing over me in waves of color and sensation. The gallery scene melted away, and suddenly we were on the rooftop of our building. The city skyline stretched out before us, but it wasn't quite right. The buildings were moving like they were dancing to music only they could hear. The stars above were impossibly bright and seemed to be drawing patterns just for us. He took my hand, and I swear I could feel electricity coursing through my entire body. The dream shifted again, and we were in this incredible ballroom that looked like it was made entirely of mirrors. Every surface reflected us from different angles, creating infinite versions of ourselves. He pulled me close, and we began to dance. The floor beneath us turned to water, but we didn't sink. We glided across its surface while the ripples created rainbows around our feet. His touch felt electric, sending shivers down my spine with each movement. The scene transformed once more, and we found ourselves in what looked like my apartment, but everything was bathed in this ethereal blue light. The walls were covered in climbing vines that seemed to glow from within, and my usual furniture had been replaced by clouds that somehow held our weight. He moved closer, his hand cupping my face, and time seemed to slow down. The air around us became thick with anticipation, and I could feel my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Just as his lips were about to meet mine, the dream started to unravel. The clouds beneath us began to dissipate, and the glowing vines started to fade. I tried desperately to hold on to the moment, to keep the dream from slipping away, but it was like trying to catch smoke with my bare hands. I woke up with my heart racing and my sheets tangled around me. The morning sun was just starting to peek through my curtains, bringing me back to harsh reality. My phone showed several missed alarms, and I realized with a mix of dread and excitement that I had to be at work in an hour. The worst part? Now I have to go sit in meetings with him all day, pretending I haven't just experienced the most intense dream of my life. Every time he looks in my direction, I can feel my face turning red as flashes of the dream come rushing back. The way his hand felt on mine, the electricity of his touch, the almost kiss that felt more real than any actual kiss I've ever had. Even now, hours later, I keep catching myself staring at him during meetings, wondering if he has any idea the effect he has on me. Sometimes our eyes meet across the conference room table, and for a split second, I'm back in that dream world where anything is possible. Then someone asks me a question about quarterly projections, and I'm snapped back to reality, where I'm just another coworker who can barely string together a coherent sentence around her crush. I've had plenty of dreams before, but this one felt different, more vivid, more real. Maybe it's just my lonely brain playing tricks on me, or maybe it's the universe's way of torturing me. Either way, I know one thing for sure. I'll never be able to look at the office rooftop the same way again, and I definitely need to avoid mirrored elevators for a while. The strangest part? This morning, when I got my usual coffee from the break room, he was there. He looked at me and smiled, then ran his fingers through his hair exactly like he did in my dream. For a moment, I could have sworn I saw a flicker of that golden dream light in his eyes. But that's crazy, right? It was just a dream, wasn't it?